recording there. That looks good. Okay. We got this. We can always do like a couple different backup recordings just in case. So, all right, Amanda, I think we're good to go. Thank you for being here. How's it going?
Yeah, really good. Thank you so much for having me. Great to meet you face to face.
Well, yeah, this is always kind of weird that these virtual conversations and, we send this conversations out to the world for everyone to see or hear, I guess, or well, both. And it's still kind of, I've said this before on here, but it still kind of blows my mind that I'm having this conversation with a complete stranger that I've only exchanged maybe a few emails with. And I'm expecting something great to happen, It's just because before, like, this is really getting me out of my comfort zone since starting this, you know what I'm saying?
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, comfort zones, it's really interesting just as I always think of the comfort zone as the known zone. Because it's the bit that we know and we keep ourselves in it because it's comfortable even when it's not comfortable. So it's really our known zone, and pushing yourself out of that's where the magic happens. So I think you're right to connect with people and just see what happens.
Yeah, the known zone. I've never heard that. I like that though, but exactly what it is. That's a good description of it.
Yeah.
So you told me before we started in here that you are, what did you say, working with energy or in an energy field? Is that what you
Yeah, I am.
So let's start and go back to how this all came about and see where that takes us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I was, as you can probably hear, born in Australia. I was born in Perth and then grew up in Adelaide. And then I moved to the UK for 11 years and then moved back to Australia, but to Melbourne. So if anyone knows, that is basically moving from the entire West Coast into the middle and then off to the East Coast. So, it's pretty big distances between them. But when I moved back to Melbourne, I actually started getting really, really unwell, chronic fatigue. I was having 3-hour naps in the afternoon. Just had been keeping things together for too long and they started to fall apart. And so in that journey of finding wellness, my GPs were, look, I have a lot of respect for Western medicine. Please don't take this as the wrong way, but
okay.
They never once asked me about my support systems or my relationships or anything like that. And they did all the blood tests and all the tests they could under the sun. And they were like, you're the healthiest sick person we know. And that was all they left it at. And I'm going, surely that's not a good enough answer. And then they tried to put me on antidepressants. And that's when I was like, something's not quite right here because I'm not depressed.
Sure.
I'm actually not well. And so that sort of led me down that natural therapies path. And so I ended up seeing a naturopath and a Chinese doctor and oh goodness, heaps of other people, chiropractors, and really started to get into that natural healing. And the more I got into it and started to change my diet and my lifestyle, the more I was like, whoa, there's something in this. Like, this is big. And then at the beginning of 2015, I went through quite a traumatic event, and I just felt like an absolute empty shell of a human being. I felt like I had nothing left to give anybody. People had asked me how I was and I just burst into tears. I couldn't finish a sentence. And as a result, I went to the doctor to get a mental health plan so that I could start seeing a psychologist, because I thought I was broken and I needed to be fixed, which I'm sure is not an uncommon story for plenty of people out there. But in that, I rang the psychologist because I knew this particular lady worked in a mindfulness way. She did mindfulness courses. She did assertiveness courses. She worked in quite a holistic way. And I'd heard really, really good things about her. So I rang her and I couldn't get in for like 6 weeks to see her. And the next mindfulness class was starting in about 8 weeks. And the receptionist asked me what was going on for me. And I kind of gave her the brief rundown of having just, emigrated to Melbourne where we didn't know anybody, supporting my then husband through work that he was miserable in. And also he was leaving his family in the UK for the first time, and supporting my son who's been bullied at school, and supporting my daughter who was just going through a really challenging time, having started school in the UK and then being told she couldn't come when she was over here. So the whole family, this receptionist just said to me, and who's got your back? And that was it. I just crumbled. And I was like, well, nobody. I'm holding it all up. Like, it felt like an inverted house of cards, and I was the bottom card and I was falling over and it was all just tumbling on top of me. And so this lady said to me, well, we've got another practitioner here. She's a kinesiologist. And I'm like, what? you know, like,
Never heard that before?
I am willing to try anything. And so I had my first session in the April of 2015, and I started studying in the October of 2015 because I was like, if I can help one person the way she's helped me, I'll have made my life worthwhile. So yeah, it's just been a phenomenal journey. So I guess that's how I got into it. And then from that, it's that slippery slope. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know, especially when it comes to energy and energy healing and vibrations and all of that side of things. And so then it was learning Reiki, and I did another form of kinesiology called TBM, which is total body modification. And I did a whole heap of other things. And now I'm doing archetypal life coaching as well. So it kind of takes you down this little slippery slope and a little winding path. And it's, very interesting.
That was a whole lot to take in right there. I mean, so, all right, okay, let's backtrack a little bit. So you think the doctor said you were the healthiest sick person they know. Yeah. And you think they just, obviously, I guess you just said it, they couldn't figure out anything to give you a diagnosis? No. Do you think they just maybe just wanted to push you off and just get you out of the way just because they couldn't figure anything out? Or
I honestly don't know. Look, I guess I always believe the best in people. I think that they were just kept coming up with blanks as to what it was, because there was nothing, none of my markers in my blood were wrong. All of my, vitamin and mineral levels that they measured and that they can measure were all fine. Sure. There was a slight sign of maybe Hashimoto's, which is an underactive thyroid. Okay. But, they never talked about the stress in my life. They never talked about relationships. They never asked me about support systems. They never asked me about any of the stuff that was actually what was not actually lined up in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, would you say it was a pretty stressful situation?
Hugely.
Yeah. It's like stress I think it goes unnoticed on how much stress people don't realize that they're under and what it's actually doing to them mentally and physically. Yeah. Yeah. And it's not until, going through, you said you went through a traumatic event and, you go through events like that or, whatever it is in life. And then you kind of sit back and do some self-reflection and try to get more self-aware. And wow, I was living off momentum and I was going through my life day by day and not realizing how much stress, I was under. And I don't know. I just, I feel like I stay on a pretty even keel personally, either really high or I don't ever really get too high. I never really get too low either. Yeah. And that's what keeps me balanced out. But other people, when I'm interacting with them and stuff, you can just tell by their body language and what they're saying and just, man, how much stress is going on? Are you okay? I mean, is there anything you can do to get out of it? And people just don't realize it, No. Yeah,
it's so normal, and it's being glorified. That glorification of busy and the working all the hours God sends at a job that you don't like, and being in relationships that aren't nourishing and nurturing for you, and all of the different things that we're fed as a society as normal are not until you move out of it do you realize how humans aren't designed to move at those speeds and do that much stuff. We're actually really not. If you think about our body physiology, we are built and the way we're put together is to move through life at walking pace, maybe running pace. Yet how much are we trying to take in driving around at 60, 100K an hour? Well, what will that be? 40 to 70 mile an hour,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you just completely overwhelmed.
Yeah. It's very overwhelming, especially in modern times. And it was just, like you said, the body and the mind probably was never designed this way. And that now that we have it all the time now that, the brain is almost information overload at all costs. There's so many decisions you're making every day and so many choices that add up little by little, and you don't even realize the impact they're going to have on your future. And then when they do, you end up, even just stressed out, like, ooh, maybe I should have chose, choice A and I should have done choice B. And now I'm completely under stress and how I'm going to get out of it. And then, you get into a relationship that you thought was the greatest thing on day one, but now you're at day 60 and you find out it's just trash and you stay in your known zone, like you just said, and you don't want to get out of it because of, I mean, might be used as a security blanket, or, you just don't want to take a chance on trying something new. And so you just continue down that road until one day, I guess, you just hit rock bottom. And that's when most people, I feel like, they decide, I got to make a change.
Yeah.
I got to do something, seek out other alternative ways to improve my lifestyle, whatever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really, really important point is we often see all of those signs that things aren't working, but because of societal expectation and all of those external influences that we see, whether it be our parents or teachers or peers or whatever, it's like we're having the wrong choices reinforced to us as being the right choices. And so when we feel into it and we realize, well, this doesn't feel right for me, we second guess ourselves because we're so used to having everything come in from that external place. And that's what we trust more than our internal knowing. And I think that's what ends up tripping us up so often.
I would agree with that 100%. Just because, exactly what you just said. You said it very well. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That you just get tripped up by it, or you don't get tripped up by it, and just, I don't really know to go off that. You said it very well.
Thank you.
I was just like, I was trying to think of it in a better thought, but I really like that. It just makes perfect sense to me. And, and kind of what we were talking about earlier, I hope a lot of people come to that realization that are having, some type of issue in their life, or realizing they're not going down the path they want. And, and that was part of me. I've always had a pretty good life, and there's no complaints. And I've never, like I said, I've never really had a very high stress in my life. Yeah. Have I had high stress? Yeah, of course, everybody has. But, I've learned different ways, and I'm still learning, like talking with people like yourself about getting myself into finding that balance, or looking for an external influence to help me get back to neutral, I guess. And just, and just, and I kind of, building my own self-awareness to where I know that, okay, this is probably not a good place for me. And whether it be meditation, journaling, and that's been helping me a lot too, actually putting my thoughts down on paper and stuff. And, and just learning this more, what is my own self-improvement and self-care. And I think a lot of that was what the pandemic taught me. I mean, that's one of the pros of it, that, my life came to a halt, and I was able to explore more options and other things that, okay, what can Chris do to, make himself better? And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, yes, whilst the pandemic has created a lot of trauma, especially here in Melbourne, that I don't think people are actually out of yet.
What about that?
Yeah, it has also given this really good reframing on so many different things. The slowing down. And one of the things for me was trying to work out how I could keep some of those things going through, return to normal, or whatever you want to call it, because I don't think normal's actually ever going to be here again in some ways.
True.
But finding those ways to bring that stillness and that slowness into everyday life. I know that one of the ladies I know, for example, every time the kids went back to school after our big lockdowns, she would go through almost a depression because she'd actually had so much fun with them at home. And then they'd end up getting sick or something like that, and she'd get them back at home. She's like, I don't understand why every time we open up, like, the kids are getting sick then. And I'm like, well, you're kind of bringing it in because you're not wanting them.
Yeah.
You're enjoying your time with them. And it's some of those sorts of things that I've noticed. So I just said to her, find those things that you've loved doing as a family and just keep them going.
That's exactly it. It's fun. A lot of people are starting to find their passions and what they really want to do out of life. And that's moving them forward and keeping them giving them a reason to get out of bed in the morning, giving them hope, just, you got to find your, whatever that is, whether it's like, woodworking, taking on a new career or a new hobby, or getting yourself in shape, whatever. And that's one of the, and I hate saying there was a pro to COVID, but it was one of them, And,
I think there's been lots, actually. Even just the fact that people now, when they get sick, guess what they do? They rest. They stay at home. Do you know what you should do when you're sick? You should rest and stay at home. It's quite interesting. Before it was that, we even had an ad for it here in Australia saying soldier on. it was for a cold and flu type medicine. And the whole thing was about soldiering on, pop a couple of tablets and keep, pushing through. And it's actually a really damaging message when you think about it. But that was what the culture, especially over here, is, you go to work and you prove yourself, rain, hail, shine, wellness, illness, whatever, you just push through and you prove yourself. And now people are taking those days to rest when they're not well. And I think it's only going to be a good thing for people because they've kind of needed to do that all along.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. Just because, I don't know how much you know about me, but, I do CrossFit, and I train and I compete on the side and coach also. And that one of the biggest things to gaining, what word am I looking for? Gaining better health is this recovery. And just that, it's one of these mindsets of CrossFit that you always have to be training to fatigue and killing yourself basically in each workout, mentally and physically, but that's not true at all. I mean, yeah, there is a place for that and everything, but as far as you're taking rest days and setting yourself back to resetting the batteries, you get a lot more gains or advantages or benefits. That's the word I'm trying to say. Benefits out of it. And some people don't realize that. And it's kind of what you were touching on earlier that, with the, so for example, the entrepreneurial norm that people think they only have to sleep 4 hours because they got to be up grinding and working and getting stuff done. And yeah, you might be doing that, but at what cost is it at other things? It's like, what type of quality of work are you doing? And that's what I don't like about this whole, the entrepreneurial spirit, or like, oh, you always got to be working or you're never going to make it in life or be successful, because that's not, there is some truth to it, but it's not entirely true. And some people can say, yeah, I only sleep 4 hours or 2 hours a night and I'm fine completely. But they're like, are you though? I mean, you can say that on Instagram and your followers are reading that and buying that, but are you really, or is that just part of how you're gaining the influence? Because there is probably some positives to that, but not completely.
No, I think, and your body, our bodies do need rest. Our bodies aren't built, as I was saying before, to travel at these speeds and to do so much. How much time when we were tribal folk, did we sit around and, the men would be honing their tools or whatever and chatting around in circle and communing together, and the women would be doing the same. And there was a much bigger community feel, and we weren't working 8 to 10 hours a day. We just weren't. We might have been pottering around or doing stuff, but a lot of it was chatting and communing with one another.
Sure.
And I think, we seem to have lost a bit of that, which, obviously we don't want to go back to living in tribes necessarily, although some days I do wonder if it would be a nice thing to do. But, I love the idea of finding, I guess, again, balance in our life. If we're only sleeping a short amount of time, our adrenals are running the show. And the more our adrenals are running the show, the more we're going into cortisol and all of that instead of those short bursts of adrenaline, because we're not supposed to be in long-term stress. We're not really built for it.
This is probably a little off topic, but doesn't Australia have tribes still, like Aborigines?
Oh, we do, yes, in certain areas, yeah. And there are days I'd love to run away and join one.
I mean,
they wouldn't have me.
Do you ever have much interaction with them being in Melbourne or anything, or are they just kind of out doing their own thing?
No, look, we, I guess I'm going to be very honest, the Indigenous culture over here is very complex. There's lots of different tribes and lots of different areas. We do acknowledge them, and it is something I'm learning more about, but I wouldn't feel qualified to exactly I guess go into how it works, because I guess it'd be the same with you guys in the North American Indians or the North American natives, where they were all in different tribes with their different languages in different parts of the land, and they lived in different ways because of it, depending on the landscape and the climate and all of that sort of stuff. So because it is so intricate, I would have to bow out of that one.
Well, no, I mean, if you have
respect to them.
Sure. No, if you have to bow out, then I'm right there next to you too. Because I should be doing it too. But it is interesting to me that, that we still have tribes like that on this world today, and they're still living their life, I guess, pretty okay. I mean, back to their primitive ways and doing their thing. I mean, and then I've read that there's so many different tribes, I think, in Australia, and they're so far apart from one another, where Australia is so big that I guess it's rare that they even run into each other.
they have such a beautiful culture. I've actually got a few books on Aboriginal healing that I've been reading about. But again, even those are quite difficult because it's, it is a culture that's been passed on through stories and language. And the stories are just amazing. It is something that I would love to go and immerse myself in for quite a while, because their healing and the way they heal for me is just mind-blowing. So it takes my energy work to a whole different level.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
So, we can talk about this vaguely, but how, for example, how would they heal? I mean, what are you exactly saying? I mean, do they have their own little practices that?
Yeah.
Like, what do you have an example of like what one would be? I mean, because I don't know. Or what would they do?
No, look, I have read a couple of books, but again, I'm not the expert. What I have read is, it's things like, going into some of the telepathic stuff and connecting into the dream time, connecting into ancestors, and I guess very similar in some ways from what I've read on the Native Americans.
Yeah.
Where they do connect a lot in through that dream time and the dreaming, or they call it the dream time here, but that dreaming and connection to the other world, and bringing through some of the knowledge and wisdom from that. And they know so intimately the plants and the landscape and where to go to, say, find water in droughts and all of the different things and all the different plants that will be healing. And of course, again, even with that natural medicine aspect, it will depend on which part of the country they're in, because they'll have different plants depending on where they are, whether it's desert or whether it's rainforest or whether it's, the plains or whatever. So yeah, it's, like I say, fascinating, but I don't know enough about it, unfortunately, to go into it, but I would love to learn more. I've been listening to, trying to absorb some more of it.
What are your thoughts on dreams? And the reason I'm asking this is because I've been trying to figure out my own thoughts here lately on dreams, because this past October, so for example, long story short, how should I put this? So me and one of my friends, workout buddies, we decided to do a challenge in October, and we called it, basically the sober October. So we did no caffeine, no alcohol for the whole month. Yeah. And it was one of those things when we were talking about stress earlier and how much you don't realize how much you're actually under, but I didn't actually understand, how much caffeine I was taking in per day, as far as coffee. And then, during my workouts, I was like, I'll have another cup of coffee or drink an energy drink, just get ready to go. But, I didn't, but I was sleeping fine to my knowledge, I was getting my 8 hours, 7 hours, no big deal. So it wasn't until like after 2 or 3 weeks into this October thing that we were doing, I started dreaming again. And, and I remember waking up one morning, I was like, man, when was the last time I dreamed? Like I haven't had a dream like that in a long time. And so now, I've been back on caffeine, but not as much, that was one thing that's benefited me greatly. Mm-hmm. And so, but now like, I'm dreaming very often. And I think, and you might have to correct me on this if you know it, but I think lucid dreaming is you actually have control of your dreams and what's going on. Now, I don't think I'm doing that, but when I wake up, I do feel like, that dream was so vivid that it was like, did I have control of that or not? But it was so real at the same time. And it's like, and kind of what we were talking about before the show, where you saying like, we'll just see where the energy takes us and podcasts and stuff. It's like, what was that telling me? What does I need to figure out? And and then I try to write it down. It's like part of my journaling, and like, what was really going on? And why did my mind take me there?
Well, the interesting thing, and I love dreams and the symbology and the messages and all of that. And I don't always get all of the symbology of mine. And sometimes I'll ask around a little bit, because our subconscious doesn't speak in words.
True.
It speaks in symbols and pictures and feelings and all those different things. So I'll take it back a little step. Our intuition comes in our clairsenses. So most people understand clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. We also then have clear hearing, clairaudience, clear knowing, which is claircognizance, clairsentience, which is clear feeling, and clairgustance and clairsalience, which is clear taste and clear smell. So basically that's how we get our psychic messages or our intuitive messages through, depending on which language you like to use. But, people who talk about gut feelings, that's clairsentience. You can give it whatever name you want, but we all have these psychic senses. It is part of being human. So we either use our seeing, our hearing, we get little messages. I sort of feel like it's through this little mail slot in my head where I just know stuff. Clairsentient, so the feeling, and then the taste and the smell. So it's any of those senses messages can come in through. So that is the way our subconscious speaks to us and our intuition speaks to us. So when we're asleep, our body will give us either things that we're processing or trying to make sense of in symbol form. Mm-hmm. Now, nightmares are an interesting one because a lot of the time, nightmares aren't meant to scare the bejesus out of us, but the reason it does is so that we remember it. So the symbology in nightmares, in the way that I have learned about dreams, is like that real super importance. It's like your subconscious screaming at you, you need to process this, you need to remember this, this is something that matters. And so it's then looking at what those symbols mean to you and how you can then I guess, learn more consciously about what you need to be doing. So it's like the subconscious kicking messages into your conscious mind for your conscious mind then to try and process. So I know, some of the symbology that comes in will only be relevant to you. But say it's an animal. So say, I don't know, a bee. Bees are in your dream. You're being chased by a swarm of bees or something like that. Yeah. Well, bees are all about community. They're about working together. And so thinking about, how are you working with your community? How are you interacting with that community? Do you need to build the community? Are you feeling, because you're being chased by the bees, that the community is against you for some reason? Or, you can start to look at some of those symbologies. Mm-hmm. And you can Google some of those sorts of things like bee medicine or the metaphysical meaning of bees, and you'll come up with other people's, I guess, interpretations. But I always go to mine first. So if I think about bees, I think about that working together, the community, the supporting one another, also the sweetness, hard work, hard work to get that nectar of life.
That makes sense.
Am I working too hard and not stopping to taste the sweetness? So you can kind of start asking a few questions and teasing it out a little bit just by going, okay, so what does that mean to me? Or what does that mean to me? And you can keep asking that question and be like a toddler. Why would that be? How could that happen? What could that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And kind of keep asking the question, okay, so I've dreamt about bees. Well, what do bees mean to me? Okay, this. Okay, so what does that mean to me? And just get that first answer in your brain as well. So the other thing people forget when they're looking at that intuition and trying to tap into their intuition is they'll get this thought in their brain and then they'll go, no, that can't be right. And they'll start overthinking it. Yeah. And they'll start, kind of talking themselves out of what that first intuitive thought was. And the hardest thing for me to have done when I first started working in this is speaking before I think.
Smart.
So especially when I'm channeling, I actually end up speaking really fast because my conscious brain's trying to catch up. And so when I do start channeling and I say it to clients in session, I'm like, I will start speaking really fast if this is, stuff coming through. And I'll be like, blah, 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 and I get to the end and it's like, oh, I hope you got that because I've got no idea what I just said.
So when you say channeling, you mean it's coming from your subconscious and then you start talking fast? Or what do you mean by that exactly? You just don't know.
Well, I don't know where it comes from, to be honest. It could be, I sort of believe in having spirit guides and all of that sort of stuff. So whether it's my guides, whether it's my clients' guides, whether it's, just higher consciousness, whether it's just stream of consciousness stuff where it's just, the right message coming in. I guess when I'm working with people, whether it be, over online, where I'm still dialed in to your energy field. So even as we're talking now, if you imagine that you have a special you radio station, I tune into that. And so I'm hitting that exact frequency when I'm tuning into people. And so our energy fields are mixing. And even just by you knowing that you're going to be speaking to me today, in some ways, your subconscious has tuned into my radio station. And that's what will direct then the conversation. So, and even if we're with people in a room, then our energy fields are overlapping. And so we're reading what's going on anyway. That's how sometimes you can go, oh, what did I say there? Even though they haven't made any external, movements, we can pick up on the fact, oh, that didn't land well, or because we're reading that energy field from them. Sure. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. Sometimes when you're, well, not even sometimes, more often than not, when I'm doing these podcasts and stuff, after I finish, so what the hell we just talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I was like, wait, where did that come from? And even though sometimes, I'll have like a random memory, for example, I forgot the last one I was doing or whatever, but a memory came back to me that I haven't really thought about in years. And again, long story short, it was when I was in 8th grade, and in my high school, we went 8th through 12th grade. And, I was really short then. I weighed barely 100 pounds coming out of elementary school. And I remember every time my bus would pull up to the driveway of the high school, I would instantly start having these gut-wrenching pains. And just because I was so nervous, like everyone was picking on me and I was going to get beat up and stuff. And it never happened. I mean, but it was one of those things that I don't know if I locked out of my mind or just never really talked about, just kind of put it way back on a very, very, very back burner of things. But this one day it just came about and I was like, where did that come from? I ain't thought about that in years, and it's like, was that just because of, kind of what you're saying, that's how the conversation was flowing, the energy, is something that sparked in my mind that, I don't know, like you said, channeling. I was like, well, did something like from a younger self come about? I don't know. It was hard for me to explain. Yeah. But it's just like when that happens to me, I do wonder though, just like, or like sometimes I'll even, remember something randomly, like as far as like, when I was talking about dreams, I remember bits and pieces, but then something like during my workouts, and I don't know if I just got a clear head then or whatever, but during my workouts, I've noticed like, oh yeah, that did happen in that dream last night. And it's like, I like that. And it's just odd. It's just a wonder to me it's just wild to me how the brain works sometimes. So these weird moments, something happens. And it's just like,
when you're working out, if you think about it, you're super focused on what you're doing.
Sure.
You're focused on what the muscles are doing. And so it's almost like in that focusing, you're really being present. And so your subconscious goes, he's finally here. So we can start sending through some inspiration or some, learnings or whatever. Because so often we spend over 95% of our time either in the past or in the future.
Really?
Yeah.
95%.
More than. Most people would be more than 97%. Because our subconscious runs the show. And so the subconscious is either living in the past of what's happened to inform what could potentially happen now, or we're what-ifing. What could happen? What's going on tomorrow? Who am I going to speak to? How's that going to work? Oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if? Oh, yeah. And so we're constantly living in one or the other. We're very rarely in the present moment. So when people there's a couple of times that I find the intuition comes up. One is when we're doing those activities where the subconscious is completely running the show, like, in the shower. You will shower yourself pretty much the same way that you have every day. You will start washing the same bits. You will literally go through the same routine every day. So your subconscious is completely running the show. You don't need to think about the way you wash yourself. You just do it. And that's why the subconscious is like, oh, okay, like we've got this. We've done this so many times. Now here's a few bits that you can think about. That's why so many people get those intuitive sparks in the shower or somewhere like that, because they are mostly present, but they're also in that really second nature type activity. For you in the gym, you need to concentrate, because if you're not concentrating, you could injure yourself. So you're almost hyper-focused on this present moment, on that next rep, on that muscle positioning, on whatever it is, but you're right here. You are right in the present. And being right in the present allows your brain to go, oh yeah, we're actually focused on this moment now. There's a little bit of space for us to start dropping some stuff through.
Do you think everyone has intuition, or do you think
everybody?
I feel like they do too. And I think a lot of people, either they just push it back or make it go unnoticed, and they don't really, because I feel like sometimes if you say that I had a feeling, I had a thought or whatever, and I just felt that was going to happen or whatever. People will just say that, I guess they're afraid what other people think of them. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I do that all the time now. And this is my job. So it's like, holy shit, they're going to think I'm freaking mad.
Okay.
You learn to trust it more because it gives you the more, I guess it's the same way. And actually it's one of the quotes from my book is, when you first start using your intuition, it is like an atrophied muscle. Ooh. It's not been used because through the patriarchy system, and love men, don't get me wrong, men are as damaged by patriarchy as anybody else. But the patriarchal system is all about control and comparison and manipulation in so many ways. Marketing is basically done on that patriarchal system. You are not enough. If you buy our product, you will then be enough. If you do this, you will then be enough.
When you say patriarchy, are you saying everything ruling by men?
Well, it's not necessarily ruling by men. It is ruling through fear and separation.
Okay.
Through fear and separation.
I'm not make sure
through,
I had that. Yeah. Exactly. Okay.
Yes. No. Men are, and so this is the thing. Within our divine self, we have the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Nothing to do with gender, nothing to do with identity, but we have the two halves of the whole. We have that wholeness. We have access to the divine feminine and we have access to the divine masculine. The easiest way to describe that is if you think about the male sex organs, they are out there, they're visible, they're projective, they are giving, they are what you can see.
Sure.
So that is the masculine aspect, all of that external stuff. If you think about feminine sex organs, they're hidden, they're mysterious, and it's much more about feeling and receiving. That's the feminine aspect.
I agree.
Now, you both give and receive. It doesn't mean you're a man or a woman, but you have that feminine and that masculine aspect to yourself. You can give things and you can receive things. And so that's just the way that, I guess the natural universe, balances things out. And you could call it whatever you wanted to, yin and yang, Shiva and Shakti. There's plenty of different terms for those opposing forces. But that's kind of what we're looking at, is balancing those opposing forces in ourselves.
Okay.
Now, with patriarchy, when it started, and you think about, the witch trials and the burning and all of that kind of stuff, it was about separating God from us, because we used to worship the goddess, which was Mother Earth and the cycles of nature and all of that sort of stuff. And they didn't know how women got pregnant. There wasn't exactly monogamy. People were literally, having rituals where everyone was with everyone and
with everybody, no big deal.
Much more free. So all of a sudden, after these festivals, women would just start getting bigger and then they'd produce babies. And so they didn't understand that full, idea of how the seed got in the woman. Mm-hmm. Women got pregnant, they gave birth, and so they were seen as little Mother Earths. But then God got separated from us and put up in the sky, and he was, vengeful and fear-based and all of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And that's when this sort of thing happened, and that's when that ruling by more of a fear aspect came in. So those more feminine aspects of the intuition, of the mystery and the hidden aspect and the emotive aspect of life started to get, kind of demonized a bit more. Those intuitive women were called witches. We're not, by the way. Well, but all of that stuff, menstrual blood used to be highly revered as, coming of age and womanhood and, oh my God, let's celebrate this. And
Sure.
Now it's like, hide it away. Don't talk to anybody. Shush.
Right.
So it's just a difference in the way that things are going. So, when we talk about intuition, sometimes we've just got to change the words for people to actually understand. If you talk to a businessman about their gut feeling and their, the way that they kill those deals just because they know what's going to happen, they're going to go, hell yeah, I do. If you go, that's your clairsentience at play, they're going to go, fuck off.
That's a good point.
Don't use that word.
Exactly it.
Same thing, different words. And so I think everybody has intuition, and everybody can work at those muscles if they want to build those muscles and tone them the same way that you do with CrossFit. Mm-hmm. It's no different. I work on my intuition every single day. And for an easy thing, think about what you want to eat for lunch or breakfast. What's going to fuel my body better?
Mm-hmm.
Walk into a food court or something. Okay, there's McDonald's over there where I can get, whatever it is. I don't eat at McDonald's, whatever they serve, burgers
Big
and
Mac,
stuff.
Big Nugget.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Or I don't know, there's a salad bar over there.
Mm-hmm.
What does my body need right now? I can tell you more than likely what your body's going to want. Now, if you ignore that intuition of what your body actually needs and you go and have the other one, that's when you end up feeling a bit bloated, a bit ugh.
Yeah.
But if you listen to what your body wants, you'll end up going, oh, that felt really good.
Sure.
Even if you were looking at two healthy options, a sushi and a salad, and you go, oh, I really fancy sushi today. Oh, I'm going to get the salad because I had sushi yesterday. Feel how you feel after eating it. And your body will go, oh, I wish I had the sushi.
Yep.
But your body was telling you what you needed to do.
I agree 100%. Just, I feel like, I eat basically the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like it's just easy for me to do it. But, when I get off that, I can tell, differences in my body on, if I didn't eat as well as I was supposed to or whatever. But sometimes also my body's like, I eat a very high protein diet and that's what works for me. I found that out. I've been through a bunch of different things. And like some of my bodies is always wanting like meat of some sort, right? And it's just, it gets that feeling. And when I don't get
I'm the same.
Yeah. And then, so this past weekend I was traveling, helping out some family do things and that, and they don't really take nutrition or anything as serious as I do. So, and I'm, if you don't, that's fine. I don't care if you do or not, but I like it. It makes, like you said, makes you feel good. But I can tell, like, they were eating bread or whatever. And, I was going, all right, I'll eat a piece of bread. No big deal. And it was one of those things that, my body's, what are we doing here, bro? Like, we don't usually eat like this. Yeah. And, I could felt like later on in the day, I was more sluggish than usual. And, but my body was still wanting, basically what you said, it was wanting some meat of some sort. That's predominantly what I usually just do for dinner, just some type of meat and fruit. And I feel good. I feel great.
Yeah.
And that's when my body was like, what are we doing here, man? This is not right. And then you could just tell it. Like, the next day I was kind of, usually when I get up, I'm pretty spunky, I feel like, but not that day. So,
and that's your body saying to you, that's your bodily wisdom, your innate wisdom going, our body doesn't work with this. Some people could eat bread all day and be fine.
Exactly.
My body can't handle gluten and things. I actually went vegan for a couple of weeks because, I thought I'll give it a go. I went to my naturopath and she went, what the fuck have you done? And I'm like, what do you mean? She said, I have not seen your levels this bad since we've been working together 2 years. And I was like, well, and I said, well, I went vegan for a couple of weeks. She don't ever do that again. She said, your body can't cope with that. And I'm like, okay. And so even with that, for some people that works beautifully. For me, it just doesn't.
No, I'm a firm believer in there's no one diet that fits all. And I'm not shitting on vegans by any means, but let's say you've ate, McDonald's most of your life and terrible or whatever. So a lot of people do switch to being a vegan just because there probably are some good things to it, but they don't get that the first couple of weeks that they are probably not eating that processed foods and sugar and everything. So they think, oh, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling well. So they keep going on this. And then down the road, it's, starts to make them, when you go get your, like if you go get your blood panel done or anything, it's like, you're probably not as good as you thought you were, which if you are, that's great. I'm not shitting on vegans. If you're happy with it, it's working for you, do it. But, I'm currently reading a book called Sacred Cow right now. And they were talking about how, vegans with, being pregnant with, the what's the word am I looking for? Not the embryo, whatever, the baby inside
the
them.
fetus. Yeah.
There you go. That's how malnourished the baby really is inside, that just based off that diet. And that it can be done correctly, but you got to be on the ball, I guess, with supplements and everything else. But so I just wanted to say that thought because I feel like there's a lot of things that go unsaid as far as vegans because they do think they are feeling better, but just because you didn't, or did you realize that you cut out all that sugar and stuff? So.
Oh no, absolutely. And I think it's the same with any kind of dietary change or whatever, if we're doing it for, and I guess diet in itself is problematic. I want to think of it as a healthy lifestyle, and I want to think of myself as nourishing and nurturing my body. And if it feels nourishing and nurturing to my body, then that's where I need to go with it. If it doesn't feel nourishing and nurturing, in terms of, killing animals, I'm really not for that at all. And yet I have to eat meat and it's a really, it's a big I guess, whatever you want to, divide for me of going, I really don't want to eat them, but I kind of have to because my body works well with that. And so if I could choose to, I'd love to,
I
but
agree.
my body doesn't work with that. And so it's really fascinating when you start to look at it. But again, providing you feel like it's nourishing and nurturing,
I
that's the main thing.
I agree 100% as far as factory farming. I don't agree with it at all. But, how, I guess one of the arguments is how do you feed, the population without factory farming or whatever? And I think, I forgot what is this, where people are starting to look more into regenerative farming, and we don't have to go down this whole road, but we can. But that's the argument that people say, well, you can't, feed that many people with just a small amount of cows or whatever. And just, but yeah, that's the whole point. It's like, I don't know where the line is. And again, it's one of those things that I don't know a lot about it to keep talking about it, but I just know that just seems to be the only thing that can feed the size of our populations now. It's just that you have to have that for some point, and that if you want $1 burger from McDonald's, that you have to have that. That's the only way to do it. So I don't know.
Oh, look, my ideal would be to get a block of land and, be off grid and have my cows and my chickens. And I would love that.
I mean, that's, like, again, we're going back to I guess our primal instincts or whatever. And that's just kind of, what we were made to move and made to, live like that, and just not eat, go into this whole junk food society that's just been made out of a lab or whatever, that people manipulate the brain again through. One thing I was learning, that sweet versus salty, and this how, like, this one guy was doing he was like a competitive food eater. He was eating like an 8-pound sundae or something, and then like he got so full, and then he switched over to salty fries and just consumed a bunch of them, and then like immediately he was able to finish the sundae just by telling his brain that to switch off however that works. I was like,
Oh, the brain is an amazing thing. The more I learn about it, the more I'm like, holy crap. It's a fascinating structure, really, when you think about it.
I want to go back a little bit, just because you said something, and I was interested in. You said you had spirit guides, I think. And what did you mean by that? Just because the first person I think I've heard say that or talk about it. I was like, wait, what does she mean by spirit guides? And then I forgot about it, and it just hit me that I wanted.
No, that's all right. I guess, you hear people talk about, say, guardian angels or whatever.
Sure.
I've met a number of my guides. I have clear seeing, so I have seen them in dreams. I have connected with them in lots of different ways. I've heard them speak to me. I know that probably sounds a little bit crazy, but I get a lot of senses from spirits that are around me. So for me, they come in lots of different ways. So the way I think about it is, I've been lucky enough to have that experience. For those people who don't believe in it, I just ask the question, but what if it is true? What if you do have these guides who are looking out for you? And whether you call it God, whether you call it higher self, whether you call it spirit guides, whatever you want to call it, we're not the authority in this world. Let's face it. If I'm the highest level there is, we're all screwed. I hate to say it. Same as, no offense, but if you're the highest thing that there is, again, we're all fucked.
I'm 100% with you. I was about to say the same thing, that you don't want that to happen.
There has to be something bigger. Yeah. And it's, I hate to say it, not to get controversial, but it's certainly not Klaus Schwab. We're looking, I'm sort of thinking, I call it God, universal source, the goddess. I use different names for it depending on, what the mood is. Now, I feel that I have a team that sits sort of between me and God.
Okay.
Now, in that team, I actually have a number of animals, which is very much that Native American type culture, actually. But I've got a number of animals that I commune with that bring me messages and things like that. I also have a main guide who, you won't be able to see her from here. I've got a picture of her on my wall, which was channeled through. Her name is Amira. And she brings through, different messages for me. And so I've got these different guides that help me in different aspects of my life. And the way I suggest to people is start to connect with it the way that it feels right for you. So for me, it's about, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, hi guys, thank you so much for being with me again. Thanks for getting me through yesterday. I guess a little bit the way you'd pray to God.
Okay.
I really appreciate your support. Show me the way. Show me what I need to be doing today. Show me who I need to reach out to. Show me, the best way that I can service my clients today. I'll ask them for guidance. If I'm getting stuck on something, okay, show me what I'm not seeing. Tell me.
Is that part of the message?
Guide me in the right way.
Part of the messages when you say they bring you messages that they're like, hey, you should probably go down this way.
Yeah.
Or do this.
Or again, that little intuitive thing of, I'm going to go, whatever it is. I'm going to go and reach out to this person to be on a podcast, or I'm going to, they'll lead me down that right way. When I wrote my book, for example, it had been fishing around in my head for 5 years in one form or another. I think I had about 5 or 6 different titles before I came up with the titles that I printed it with. And that manuscript was out of my head in 5 weeks. It was literally 120 days from me typing my first words to holding my book in my hands. Now, getting 50,000 words out in 5 weeks, a lot of that, I was reading through it after I'd got it back from my editor going, I know I wrote all this stuff, but I don't really remember some of what I wrote.
Interesting.
Because it was literally, I was just typing the words as they were flowing through. And I guess that same way that you were saying, where did that come from?
Yeah.
I was reading some of it going, that's pretty good. I like that.
But, dog can do that.
Yeah. But again, a lot of it sort of just felt like once I opened that floodgate and I was connected in at that right level, it just came through. And it's the same way that when I'm working in healing sessions with clients, or I don't call myself a healer, I call myself a facilitator. So I translate what your body wants you to know, and you either make the changes or you don't.
That's a good way. Yeah.
So, when I'm working in that, I will get messages through. I had a client who had lost their child. And when the message first came through, I was like, oh, no, don't say anything. And then it came through again and I'm like, oh, and then it came through again and I'm like, oh, and I'm checking, I use muscle testing, which is basically checking muscle tone for answers of the body. So if something is stressful to the body, certain muscles will not hold tone. And if it's not stressful, then the muscle can hold tone as a really, really basic sort of, indicator. So I was asking her for a yes or a no as to whether she was ready to hear the message. Anyway, it tested up as a yes, and I gave her the message, and it was the biggest healing that, she was like, oh my God, I can let go of all this stuff that I've been carrying now. And it was only a few sentences that I got through, but I could feel the presence of her child there. And the first time I had it was, it freaked me out because I was doing my Reiki. I was learning how to be a Reiki practitioner. And I was doing a healing on a friend of mine, and I had no idea that she'd actually lost a daughter. And as I'm doing it, I just got this vision of a child standing next to me. And as soon as she opened her eyes after the healing, she looked up at me and she went, oh, Rose was with you, wasn't she, while you were doing that? And I went, yeah, you might want to talk to me a little bit about that because it freaked me out. And she said, oh yeah, Rose is my daughter. I lost her when she was 8. And I went, 6 or 8. And I'm like, that would have been nice to know, because I didn't know that I could see things like that or do things like that. And so it was quite a fascinating, I guess it just comes through in those different ways.
The spirit of the daughter was with you?
Yeah.
So
as I was healing the mom.
So let's clarify this. So, and I've talked to somebody before that, I had to ask this question. So, there's a difference between spirits and ghosts, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where some of the confusion gets. And I forgot how she explained it to me exactly. But yeah, she basically made the way you just said, described Rose was the spirit, and that there's a lot more spirits than we actually, I guess, know that are around us, I think is how she said. And that, and it could be some part of our lives or whatever, but I can't remember how she explained ghosts. But anyway, that was the whole point. I was like, that makes perfect sense to me at the time. Because I always just thought of spirits as ghosts and ghosts as spirits. Like I just thought they were one and the same all the time. And I thought that goes one of those things that, it just kind of gets overlooked or just never really clarified on?
I think the spirit world is such a big, I mean, and again, I only know the bits that I know. But for me, you know, the people that we have lost that have passed over, you know, when you're in the spirit world, you're omnipresent. You can be anywhere. You know, the same as God. You can watch over, you know, if you're a grandfather, you can watch over all of your grandchildren simultaneously. You know, you don't just have to be in one spot because you're not a physical meat suit. You're, you know, you're free from that.
Yeah, I like that.
And so, you know, and I sort of see those spirits of people that we've lost as sort of sitting, you know, I guess closest to earth, if you want to, I guess, categorize it a bit more. Our spirit guides then for me would be, you know, perhaps that next sort of field up along with your archangels and those kinds of energies. And then you've kind of got your ascended masters and gods and things like that, just that little bit higher. So, and not that it's a tier system or a hierarchy, but that's kind of the way that I think about it. So when I am in that space, it's like I lift my energy up and they bring their energy down slightly and we mix it up here. Whereas when I'm not that people can see that when they're listening, but if you imagine me lifting my energy up and then bringing their energy slightly down, that's where we mix. Whereas for you and I, when we're speaking, we're pushing our energy out and tuning into that radio station more on a horizontal rather than a vertical level.
And speaking of this, or like misconceptions, is this one of the things or topics that kind of go or not clarified as well as far as like the differences in spiritual and religion?
Oh, look, my idea of, you know, I was raised very religious.
Sure.
And I used to love church. I used to love it. When everyone was singing together and there was some kind of peace that I always found in. But then people would walk out the church and be the same asshole they were before they walked in. And I'd be like, oh, this is just bullshit, you know? And not everyone's like that.
I agree.
But I kind of got sick of the hypocrisy of it and the holier than thou bullshit. But the way I look at it, and again, my very personal view, is that religion is much more about dogma and again about that fear and separation. Whereas for me, spirituality is about my experience with the spirit world or with God, my personal communing, my personal experience. Some of what I talk about, people, you know, would go, oh, you're crazy, but it's what I've experienced and it's what I've, you know, been led to understand, to see, to hear, to feel, to know. Because it's stuff that's coming from my personal experience. And that for me is the difference between spirituality and religion, is I'm not doing it with rituals and dogma and rules to it. I'm just trying to be the best person I can and not be an asshole as much as possible. I'm human, so occasionally I am an asshole. Sure. But, you know, it's that kind of thing where... you know, that for me, if I'm trying to just be the best person I can, and that's the experience that I'm having with the guidance that I'm getting, then to me, that's my spirituality.
You know, with all the different religions, that this seems to be one of the common factors, and you just hit it on the head that, you know, that be a good person and don't be an asshole. It doesn't, no matter what religion you believe in or you follow or whatever, but that seems to be basically the most common factor of all of them. Is that be a good person and, you know, don't be an asshole. Just, you know, treat others, I guess, how you would want to be treated and stuff. And that's one of the things that, you know, I've kind of seen that as far as religion and stuff, because, you know, my family, I mean, I grew up kind of the same way, was religious, went to church and everything. But, you know, as far as like the difference between Baptist and Methodist and all that, it all kind of seemed the same to me. And, but it was also one of those things that was also forced on me at the time too, because it was just one of those things. Oh, we go to church, and that's just what we do. Yeah, and it was kind of like, okay, we just go because we're going, and don't really have anything else. You know, I can't really say anything back to mom and pop about it. But I was like, all right, we go. But then as I got older, though, it was also I started to notice that some people would tell me that, you know, they're going to church on either Christmas or Easter. And I was like, well, when was the last time you went before that? And I was like, are you just going because you have to go? You know, and it's like, because that's the social norm. You're going because you're supposed to go. And I was like, I don't think it's supposed to work that way. You know, I mean, and it was like, and it was what you said too. Like people would just leave and like, hey man, that's not what you were saying in church or talking about. You're acting like a complete idiot out here now, you know? And so, that's just, I don't know. It's one of those things that I guess we're taught and that's just what we're supposed to follow, but everyone has their own life experiences and goes down different paths, and they have their own views of whether it's spirituality, religion, or whatever. And it's just interesting for me to hear and, try to understand it, and just try to get more clarification, because I feel like other people are kind of similar to me and don't realize, or look at a different way to look at it, I guess.
Well, I guess that the big thing for me is that my spirituality doesn't have rules. Every morning when I go and walk my dog on the beach, it is my communing with God and nature.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and
like your own way.
I occasionally will listen to a podcast or something like that, but oftentimes, like this morning, I will just, it'll be me and the dog and, and whatever else is going on. And that's often as I'm walking, I'll be chatting with my guides or show me what I'm not seeing, or, show me the way. What's my next step? What do I need to do next? What's my priorities? How can I gain more support with this? And, a good example is, when I've been going through some tough times, I might, when I'm walking, just all of a sudden get, say, a practitioner's name come into my head. And I'll ring and I'll make an appointment and I'll go, I don't know why I'm supposed to see you. And next thing, whatever it was I was having that issue with will be sorted out. Just because I've had that name drop into that mail slot at the top of my head or whatever. Or I might meet somebody who goes, oh, have you thought about this? And, if I get something given to me 3 times, I need to do it.
Ooh,
that's the way I look at it.
It's like, hey, we're trying to show you every sign right here, every door. Yeah. You got to go do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll give you a funny story just on the whole spirit guide side of things. So when I first met my partner, he walked around the corner and I was like, oh my God, it's him. And I'd walked into dates before going, oh, it's not him. Okay, I've got to sit and have a drink and be polite and do all of that sort of stuff. Sure. But he walked around the corner. I was like, oh my God, it's him. And then, of course, the doubt comes in. You can't know that just from somebody walking around a corner and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, right, 3.5 years together, right. we're still together. But I remember about a month or 2 into the relationship, and I was walking along and I'm like, okay, I've had a few signs now, because I kept asking for signs. And I said, right, show me a black and white feather if I'm actually on the money here or if I'm not. And so I'm walking along and there's a white feather and I'm like, oh, halfway there, but then a couple of meters away, there was a black feather. And within 10 meters, I saw the white feather, the black feather, and then a black and white feather. So when I'd said, show me a black and white feather, they gave me the black and the white feather and then the black and white feather. And I'm like, God, you guys, and that was within 10 meters. And it wasn't exactly like there were heaps of trees or anything like that. There was no reason for these feathers really to be there. But it just made me laugh that there were those 3 in a row of going, we're going to give you a sign that you cannot ignore.
Yeah, they made it pretty obvious with that right there.
Yeah. So.
Wait, was that your first initial thought, though, that, it's like, oh, we can't meet like this. This is probably not true, that, like overthink it kind of?
Oh, it was, the initial thought was, oh my God, it's him. Yes, this is, and then it was like, oh, but, how do I haven't even spoken to him yet, and then the thinking mind kind of comes in to talk over the intuition. I think that's what I was saying before. You've got to speak before you think, because the speaking is the intuitive mind that, that stream of consciousness stuff, rather than when we stop and we think about it, we'll talk ourselves out of what our intuition is telling us.
Amanda, I think we're getting a little close on time here, but I wanted to ask, I feel like everything we've talked about was this, and I guess I already know the answer to this question, but I wanted you to kind of elaborate on it for the listeners. Like, was all of this, like what little we talked about, your story and like religion and, nutrition, was all this kind of your motivation for the book, you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, I've had a lot of big T traumas and a lot of little T traumas that all kind of added up, and, finding my way out through the energy healing and through spirituality and through sorting out, diet. Like, I mentioned the meat suit before.
Sure.
So quantum physicists have proven that the universe is 4% physical matter. So most people put a lot of emphasis on this meat suit, but this physical body is 4% of the picture. So I look at what the other 96% is. So that's our emotional health, our energetic health, our spiritual health, our mental health, our, emotional, financial, relational, transformational, all of those different aspects of us actually combine to make who we are. And I guess that journey of me finding who I was underneath all that conditioning, it was the motivation for me to write the book. And I guess there's bits of all of it in there, is because we need to look at ourselves in a much more multidimensional way. Just by fixing the physical, we're not going to fix the other bits. Just by looking at the emotional or the spiritual, we're not going to be looking at it. It all feeds into one another. And we sort of need to work on a few of the strands. You don't just do CrossFit.
Right.
You also eat well. You also do your meditation. You're looking after your spiritual self. You're looking after the energy side of it. You're looking after the mental side of it. You're bringing in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's really what it was, is because, I was looking at the fact that the external influences dominated my life. My life on paper was perfect. I had a rich, successful husband. I had 2 beautiful children. We lived in the UK. We'd moved to Australia. We traveled. We had the things. We had the big pool, the big house and the pool and the things.
Mm-hmm.
But I was miserable as hell because I'd followed other people's prescriptions for what my life should be.
Sure.
I was a white, Church of England raised, good middle-class girl who followed that prescription of you go to high school, you go to university, you get a job, you meet somebody, you get,
I'm with you 100%.
I followed all of that and I was miserable and I got sick. And then I started to listen to my internal truth and my whole life has changed. And it has been the best thing ever. Yes, it's been painful because ripping apart, your life and a marriage and all of that kind of stuff is less than easy. But every step of the way, I've started listening more and more to what my soul needs and wants to live the best life it can.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Do a lot of real quick, do a lot of your clients kind of have gone through the same path? Because I was exactly just like, that's what I was ingrained on my life, was that, go to school, go to further school, you'll get a better job, then you'll meet somebody, have kids, you'll work your whatever X amount of years until you retire, then do whatever you want to. And, and I'm still doing that. Don't get me wrong, but this was when the pandemic hit. I wanted to start something like this and take a chance on something. I felt like it was one of the first things. Starting this podcast is what did it for me. But but do you feel like most of your clients have gone down a path like that, similar to yours, or if they're just completely, just like you said, they've sought out every help they can get and they just haven't found it and they just kind of reach out to you then, or what do you think?
Lots of people come in different ways. Oftentimes kinesiology is one of the last things that people look at because it's woo-woo and out there and all of this kind of stuff, and people don't understand how powerful it is. It is based in Western science as well as Eastern wisdom. Right. And that's what I love about it is it does look at the whole body, that whole 100%, not just the 4% of the physical. We're not just looking at what symptoms are there. We're looking at what the root cause of those symptoms are. So I do have a lot of people who have complex trauma come through. So whether that's been abuses or, just different big traumatic events. A lot of my clients have had some form of complex trauma in their life. And also a lot of them are just feeling really stuck and uninspired. And life actually shouldn't be dull and uninspiring. It's pretty bloody magical.
I agree.
And people have lost that. And they feel like life should be giving them more than what they're getting. And so for me, I sort of see my job as holding the light for other people until they can manage to see the light within themselves, because all of us have that God source within us, that pure peace and love and joy and happiness and all of that. It just gets covered over with the shit of life. And so I agree. My job's to kind of hold space for them as we clear some of that off and, and rediscover who they are.
Amanda, I think we should take it home on that right there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful chatting to you.
If people want to find you and find the book and all that stuff, plug it away and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I am actually on Kindle Store now, which is very exciting. I'm going to be, I actually have 2 titles for my book. There is the mainly marketed one, which is called Divine Messy Human, but I couldn't not also launch it with my working title, which is a little bit rude. It's Don't Let That...
You can say it.
Don't let that cunt steal your bricks. So that's the other title for the book. And they're both available on Kindle Store. I'm also at www.amandakate.com.au. I'm on Facebook at Amanda Kate Transformation. I'm on Insta. I've just started on TikTok because, you know, I'm getting a bit bored with Facebook. And that's at Divinely Messy. Mm-hmm. So all over the place. Are you doing? But all of the links are on my website.
Are you doing the dances on TikTok?
Oh, hell no. I'm not that coordinated. I'll leave that to the young kids.
That's what I'm doing too. I don't have TikTok, but that's all I hear about. It's just dances and stuff. But I think it's other style too. So anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. So good to chat to you.
Thank you. This was great. Anything else you want to say before we call it?
No, just thank you so much.
All right, we're out of here, everyone. Be good to yourselves.